So the last thing I wanted to cover, and it's weird, it's one of those things where I thought they were already doing something like that. So Greg sends me one of the newsletters that we read. Um, this one's from someone at Bloomberg. Um, well, I can't remember the name, but
Yeah, this was
so
Power On.
Apple's
Mark Gurman's
it was Gurman. That's right. It was
Power On. I think it
Mark Gurman.
was. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So he wrote about Apple's they're readying creating a system to be able to update software to unopened phones, right? So Greg and I mentioned last week before people got their 15s and their 15 Pros in, there was already an update to iOS 17, right? And it was a crucial one. You needed to update it right out of the box, right?
Before
So
you transferred your data, otherwise it would cause
yeah,
major issues. Yeah.
yeah, you would have to
Not
start
uncommon,
back
right?
over
I
after the
mean,
update,
it is not uncommon to have this happen, right? I mean, you can think
right?
about this from a logistics standpoint. They're in a factory.
Hmm.
They've got to be boxed. The
And they have
betas
to
for
make
the
millions of them,
yeah, and the betas for
millions.
iOS are running right up until release candidate. They do the release candidate release 2 weeks before the phone arrives on somebody's desk, right, at their house.
Right.
And so there is no time if there's anything after that, even at that point, right? How
Hmm.
do you box millions of iPhones? How do you update millions of iPhones, box them all, prep them for shipping in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Which is
Yep.
what, in theory, they would have to do.
So if you think about it from a user perspective, or how Apple are about their customers anyway, they want to give them the best experience. Having to open the device and not have to worry about updates and stuff is a good user experience, right? Not having to worry about connecting to Wi-Fi and doing an update. Just open it in a box and start that transfer process, transfer your service over, and then if you have to do an update later on or something like that, that's a good point to do it. But
Do you remember,
um,
Jason, when Steve Jobs went, "There's no way we're going to make somebody charge their phone,"
right, I remember
right?
that,
Because it's
and they come charged, yeah,
yeah, they come with charge where you could start using it immediately. Now, this was back when iPhones were still, you didn't get a brand new one every year or every 2 years, right? There were still a
right,
lot of people not getting iPhones. And he's like, no, the first experience somebody has with this beautiful device that's going to change their life is not going to be to have a red flashing battery icon that says plug me in and wait for four
right.
hours. Because how many
Having to
devices do you
open it
get
and
that
charge
say,
it.
please charge to full before first use?
Right, a lot. Or it'll say like connect for like an hour or something like that, or charge for like an hour and a half or something before use. And right, that was a good move. That was a good customer service move by from Apple. So this is part of that, right? It's that initial experience, that initial impression that someone gets when opening an iPhone for the first time, right? It it it, it may not be geared towards people who upgrade every year or people who love iPhones like us, but if you hand someone an iPhone, they open it out of the box and they look at it and wow, this thing is beautiful, and then right immediately, please update me before you can use me, or
Yeah.
please charge me. That ruins the experience. So what Apple came up with is they have a system now where they're going to preload this software on the phones right before they ship. I don't know at what point. I'm assuming before it leaves the factory, right? Because once it's in the carrier's hands, they're not going to do anything with them.
Well, they'll have
I'm
to on
assuming,
those. They'll have to on those, but this talked about in store. So
right? The ones in store too. Yeah.
think about all, I mean, they're flying off the shelves right now, right? But think
Yeah.
about that iPhone 14 Pro that's
Hmm.
been out for over a year, and it's that one color that's been sitting on the shelf in that one small store for the last 6 months. And how many software updates
Right.
have there been? I
And
mean,
security patches and things like
correct.
that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So this was specifically mentioned in store, but I would assume that they would have something at the
Right.
factory, right? Or at the storage facility or whatever that's going to do the same thing. Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
Right. No, no, no. So what they came up with is they're going to plan this system, right? And basically, it's going to be like a pad-like device, and they'll be able to stack phones on top. what it's going to do, send a signal to the phone to wake the phone, do the update, and then send a signal to shut down the phone, right? To put it in standby mode to save on that battery
Well,
life,
they're going to
right? So when the
power
phone,
it on and
yes,
power
power
it
it on,
off, right? It isn't
right?
just that, because these phones don't sit in these boxes in
In
what
standby mode, right, right. They're
in
off.
what we think of as standby mode, right? We think of it as powered off, which I don't think is 100% accurate. We'll geek out
No,
on that here in just a minute.
no, it's not. So, yep, send a signal to power it on, do the whole boot process to boot up because it has to be booted to receive the software upgrade. Run the upgrade, and then somehow know when it's complete. Send a signal to shut the phone down again, right? So we talked
Without
about it,
opening the
and
box.
without opening
All
the
the little
box, still the
tabbies are
plastic.
still intact, right?
So my question to you, one, I thought they were already doing something similar to that, but now when you understand the process that it's going to take, when does Apple give up that control? Because this is not something that they advertise that they have the ability for. So maybe this is the last two devices, right? The iPhone 14 and 15, right? And phones going forward. They didn't mention iPads, they didn't mention AirPods and things like that. But when you think about it, what gives a phone the ability to be remotely turned on and turned off?
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like the Black Mirror, that sci-fi show, sci-fi Twilight Zone kind of show. Like, I didn't know Apple had that much control over devices. And
Yeah.
when did they give up that control?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Nobody needs to panic about this, right? I mean,
Yes,
this is
yes, it's
this is
not a
like all
scare
those
tactic.
stupid emails that I get that say, "Hey, I infected your computer and I can control your camera and I've been watching you,"
Right,
right? This is
right.
not that kind of a scenario, and if anybody's going to do this right, it's going to be Apple. So,
It's going to be Apple, and
there's
not for
no
nefarious reasons, right? They're not
yeah.
going to turn over that type of control to a
Yeah.
government agency, right? How many times has Apple ran into issues with the government because they wouldn't unlock someone's devices or
Yeah.
turn it over to someone? So I trust Apple, but it's just weird knowing that they have that control, right?
Here's what I think it is. So, if I remember right, when you there's a setting, matter of fact, I'll go in and look at it right now, but there's a setting in Find My,
Hmm.
right, where you can specify for your device. Let me go into my Pro Max and notify as left behind. But there's also this feature I thought, I don't see it in here right now, but I thought there was also maybe it's in the other settings. I think there's a feature, or at least I thought there was a feature that said, "Hey, when if you flip this on, your device will be able to be located even when it's powered off."
Right. And
Right.
so I don't remember exactly where it is, but I know mine is on because I know when I shut down my phone, either restarting or something, it says um, iPhone is able to be tracked, or iPhone is still able to be located or something like that. It gives you that pop-up notification when the phone is turned off or when it's booting down to let you know, even though you're turning it off, it's still going to be tracked. So that is a setting. So it's
Yeah,
when
I
it,
can't.
even when the phone is off, it's not actually off.
Yeah, I can't find it right now. So, but yeah, I really thought there was something around that, and
Yes.
um, what they probably are using there is Bluetooth LE, right? Bluetooth Low
I think
Energy.
so.
So I
Because they're
think
talking
because
about a pad, right? And they're stacking them on that pad. So they have to be within a few feet. And I'm assuming you can only stack them yay high, right? It may only be able to put 10 devices. Because
yeah,
the iPhone box is what, 2 inches,
yeah.
like the height of it. So if you stack, it probably has a certain height, and then that top one won't receive the updates or something. So there's limitations to it.
Yeah, so I think that's probably what they're doing, right? So if they can find the location, um, if they can find the location when it's powered off using
Mhm.
the Find My network, that means there's some sort of signal that's being there until the battery dies, right? Which
Yes,
would
when it's,
probably take forever.
yeah, totally dead.
And I had some of the similar issues. Remember when the AirPods Max came out, right? There was this big thing about all the AirPods Max dying when you thought you had
Hmm.
put them into standby mode, but you really hadn't. Um,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think
yeah.
it's probably the um I think that's probably the thing. I don't know. It could be that. But so my
Right,
guess is there's something like that that will allow them to send that signal. And
right. Or
um,
maybe the NFC chip too, right? Because you have to be in a certain range for NFC to even work,
yeah,
right? And these new phones have where you can tap. So maybe if it's like I said, a short stack of maybe 10 or to 8 to 10 boxes, they're within that range, and maybe they're using an NFC chip. We don't know, right? They're not going to release this. They're not going to unlock this for developers to be able to develop things for, at least not in the future. But it's just one of those things where Apple has these abilities to do phones like diagnostics on the AirPods, right? There's not many ports and not many things they can do, but we took them to the Apple store, a couple of weeks ago, and they ran diagnostics on them,
yeah,
right? You think about when you remove the watch band and they have that little port inside of the little notch right there on your Apple Watch. And we always thought that was going to be some kind of expansion port for different watch bands and stuff like that, but it turned out it was like a diagnostic port or something. So
yeah.
these phones have a lot of abilities that we don't know about that Apple can take advantage of. And yeah, this is an example of that, right? Very
Yeah,
cool.
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I've had Apple support folks say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a link and click on this and it's going to, run a script on your phone and pull back some
Yeah,
diagnostics so I can see what's going on." There is a lot of that kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
you know, I I don't know. I don't worry about it, right?
yeah.
So if this
I don't think it's a
gets
cause
out
for
there,
concern.
that's what the media is going to say. Um, they're going to say, "Hey, this is Apple. They can shut off your device, do anything they want with it," and that's just not the case. So
Yeah. Well, in theory, they could. I don't think that's going to be the case. They're not going to be shutting people's phones down remotely or whatever. And obviously, again, this is a pad-like device. This is a separate piece of hardware that's going to control that. So it's not going to be somebody walking around with a remote in their pocket shutting down iPhones. But cool is for them to pull back the curtain a little bit and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing to improve that experience." And then us as geeks say, "Hey, I didn't know you can do that."
yeah,
Like I didn't realize that was a thing.
yep, yeah.
So,
So yeah,
but
I'm looking at an article on The Verge. Now this is a little bit, it's a 2021 article, but it talks about which phones can do this, and this was only through the 13 at the time, but yeah, it's basically
okay,
that send last location. As long as you've got that on, it's constantly going to be sending that until the battery really
you're right, right.
dies,
Oh, it was
right?
the yeah send last location,
Yeah.
right? So if someone grabs your phone and turn it off, it can still
Yeah.
send that location out.
And so it says if you're using iOS 15, I assume it's still on 16 and 17 on your iPhone, you'll be able to locate it even if it's run out of battery power or has been shut off. So, yeah, there's something going on there. And maybe as part of this, they come up with a new state, right? That's this like super low battery
Hmm.
mode, right? That all of their phones kind of sit in until you power it on the first time, and then it's this preloaded state. Who knows, right? But
Yeah,
I'm not worried about them doing anything nefarious with it. But I think it's cool
yeah.
that you
I
won't
don't
have
think
to
so.
worry about a device you get having to, oh, I've missed 6 versions of the software.
Right.
So
Okay. All right. Well, that was all I had today. I did want to talk about that. I thought it was really cool. And thanks for sharing those customizations. Really weird that you don't have the phone app on your phone, which again is going to make me reconsider too. There's some apps that I just have just out of habit from my very first iPhone to now, just always having those few icons down there, and maybe with some widgets and things like that, I can get them moved around.
yeah, I've made a few really nice, pretty contact posters, and most of them I've never seen pop up on the screen
Right.
because it's the contact photo because it's always the messaging. So
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, that's all we had this week. I think that was a good show. I think that was a long enough episode to work with. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening as usual, and we'll talk to you soon.
have a good one.